and welcome back to our audit kickoff streams. My name is Jess, and today we have another exciting project for you to dive into. This contest is going live right this second at midday UTC, Friday the 20th of December, and it has a prize pool of over 49,000 OP. So a huge prize pool here. We're looking at an end slot of 3,000, and this is for project QuantAMM. Now we are going to do a deep dive into this repo during this live stream. We have the developer here with us as well to run through that in a lot of detail, so make sure to have your cup of teas at the ready. If you have any questions about the repo, please feel free to drop those within the live chat of this stream. And if you have any questions following the live stream, then head over to our Discord, which is linked in the description below. You can ask all of your questions there. The sponsors will be in there to help field questions there as well. Now, let's get started. So we're going to run through the protocol, what it is. On a high level, let's just quickly introduce what this project is. So if I can share my screen, there we go. QuantAMM is a next generation DeFi protocol launching blockchain traded funds. LPs are no longer only chasing fees, swap fees. The weight of the pool changed to take advantage of current underlying price movements and therefore can overcome MEV and Impermanent Loss. QuantAMM does this in a continuous responsive way with advanced fully on-chain TradFi-style strategies. So we are going to have the developers join us on this stream to go through the protocol in a more technical level, a little bit deeper, to see what the functionality is, what the actors are, here to answer any questions that you have when you are watching this live stream, and as well, as I mentioned, in the Discord. So let's welcome to the stage the developer from QuantAMM. Let's pull you. Here we go. Thank you very much for joining us. Just hello and thank you for tuning in. So we're going to, we've got Matthew here as well. Let's add to stage. So two members of the QuantAMM team are here to do a quick introduction. If you would like to do a quick introduction on QuantAMM, how we've got here and what we're hoping to see within this audit.
Yeah, so QuantAMM is kind of a novel take on liquidity providing. It kind of blends asset management and liquidity providing. Now, the way you can see this, an analogy to kind of say is that these are ETFs on chain. In essence, our execution engine is arbitrage, and we are a balancer pool. So what this means is we offer slightly off-market weights to incentivize arbitrageurs to rebalance the underlying pool's holdings in a given direction. So let's say you were a Uniswap pool and you were 50-50, and 50% of that was Bitcoin and 50% of that was stables. If Bitcoin was mooning, you don't really want to be holding 50% of Bitcoin. You want to be holding 90% of Bitcoin, 99% of Bitcoin. In a similar way, if you're holding 99% of Bitcoin and the price starts decreasing, you don't want to be holding 99% of Bitcoin. You want to go back to kind of say stables. Now, two token examples is the simplest way to think about things. But in reality, like we are a Balancer V3 launch partner. We have built on top of Balancer V3. And so it's a multi-token up to 8 token pools. Now, in reality, what this means is we are a protocol of two halves. There is the pool itself, where you do the trading and the depositing and the withdrawing. And there is what determines whether or not to be 99% in one asset or 1% in the asset. So really, it's a protocol of two halves. Another kind of big difference to projects that you might consider or you might have done before is, in a sense, those two halves work without really much re-entrance or much kind of circularity or asynchronicity. There is a cron job that runs kind of every hour or every day that determines the weights or the weight vectors, which you'll come to see in a minute. And there is the pool that trades independently to that cron job. So really, it's more about logic. It's more of a logic engine. So there's a lot of maths and kind of code loops and code logic that is involved. On the cron job side, and the trading side is obviously standard kind of AMM trading. That is, the invariant function is at any given block, it is a balancer pool. It is between blocks that the weights change. So if we're talking about where potential vulnerabilities come in, we've kind of focused very heavily on multi-block aspects, especially around MEV. And there's kind of research papers that if you want to, you can dive in there. But in any one given block, we should be a balancer pool. I'm probably going to say should a lot because obviously it's up to you to kind of find issues. But on any one given block, we should be a balancer pool. So really, that's a tale of two halves of the protocol. The kind of small addition to the pool side of things is we have a custom withdrawal hook. Normally, when you deposit into a AMM pool and you withdraw, you pay a fixed fee quantity on your withdrawal. What we do is we kind of incentivize LPs to be aligned with pool creators, and we say the withdrawal will only be on any potential uplift that has been generated for the LPs. So if the pool generates basically no uplift for you, you pay a standard swap fee to exit. But if it generates uplift for you, you'll pay slightly higher amount. And that's really kind of an overview of the protocol from an AMM perspective. There are quite a few TradFi rules that we have created base building blocks to be able to run fully on chain. If you were to take a standard TradFi strategy and try to run it on Ethereum mainnet, the gas cost would be prohibitively expensive. So we have a rule structure where we basically got these base estimators that run the rules, and then the rules themselves. The rules themselves are defined in white papers. A docsend link should be being added to the CodeHawk white page, CodeHawk page as we speak. They are defined in the white paper. It is absolutely in scope to say that like if the white paper definitions do not match the implementation, then that's obviously in scope. But really, these rules are kind of example rules. We do expect community members to be able to come in and build their own rules on top, and to be able to structure their own kind of automated, what we call blockchain traded funds, which are really what you would call kind of balance and managed pools on steroids. And really, that is how we're coming from a V3 perspective. We think V3 is very exciting. Balancer V3 does offer a lot of base functionality. That functionality is not in scope. We have implemented the kind of balancer regression test suite for quantum pools or QuantAMM pools. So you will see a whole load of regression tests that run on functionality that is basically in the underlying base pools and base routers of Balancer V3. But in essence, on the pool side of things, it is just the pool contract itself and the uplift only withdrawal hook itself. And I think from just a descriptive element, that's probably as far as we're going to be able to get before swamping anybody. You could probably get into screen sharing, Jess, if that's where you want to go.
Yeah, absolutely. So what we're going to do now is we're going to share screen, walk through the code base on a more technical level, and just see the intended functionality, go through the different actors, see how they interact with the project, and just get a little bit more insight into the code base if possible. Here we go.
Cool. So actually, if we just look at the repo itself, we'll just see how it's structured. So this is a snapshot of the Balancer V3 repo. Balancer V3 went live last week. So that is a kind of effectively live snapshot that we do not expect to change. And within the Balancer V3 repo, we have the specific different types of pools. Gyroscope is another Balancer V2 project that is migrating to Balancer V3, so also pool Gyro project. This is all in the scope section of the CodeHawks page. But the main aspect of the pool is dictated by this pool quantum section. Inside the pool hooks section, hooks are basically the same as kind of Uniswap V4 style hooks into various places of the Balancer repo. we have this hooks quantum folder where there is the uplift only hook. And apart from the interfaces, that is the scope of the project. You can do yarn install from the root, which installs all the packages for all the workspaces. This is a Solidity Foundry project, and in essence, this is kind of where we start. Now, and I think, let me just close the terminal. Does that make the picture bigger for you, Jess?
I'm on mute. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, looks good.
Great.
Thank you.
So as I kind of said, it's a protocol of two halves. The pool itself is encapsulated in kind of one contract. And really there is one entry point from the kind of the cron job style update weight runner and the pool itself, and that is a set weights function that sets the weights into the pool. Again, this should all be permissioned so that, you know, no randomer can come in and do set weights, those kind of things. But really, this is almost like a flow diagram of the cron job to run, to generate new weights and to calculate new weights. There is an actor, it can be chain link automation. It can just literally be somebody with enough gas to run the call itself. And the entry point for our kind of strategy runner is kind of perform update. And some of these are slight pseudocode function names, but really what it does is it does an interval check. These are periodic updates. They are supposed to run every hour or every day, but you can't kind of trigger it every minute if it's every day. So there's just a check to say whether or not it's been an hour since the last update. Then we get the price data that we need to basically plug into the rules. We do have three kinds of oracles, and really Chainlink oracles are the focus of the main project. What we do is we have a backup process that says if the primary oracle has a staleness of a given threshold, the pool creator could have specified a number of backup oracles to use automatically if that is the case. So you could specify a primary Chainlink oracle and then specify a backup Chainlink oracle if that is too stale. Once we get the price data, we get the weights from the pool, and that is the weights for the current block of the update weight process. And with the price data and with the current weights, you can now calculate the rules. So in essence, the rule structure is you have a base rule class, and this base rule class inherits a moving average, and that is just a moving average of the price normally. And then you have derived update rule classes, and these are kind of 4 variants on the derived update rules. And let's just stick with momentum to keep things simple. So this is a momentum pool that is dictated on pool creation. Update rules do not change after they are created, and their parameters are not updated after creation. So it's all fixed on creation. This update rule, this momentum pool triggers an update for the momentum strategy. Using the new prices, the current weights, and intermediate values that are stored in the base estimators that a strategy would use, you can calculate according to the algorithm inside update rule, calculate new weights. You can calculate a new weight. Now, momentum, for instance, is just the faster a price moves upwards or downwards, the more important it is. The slower a price moves, the less important the price move is. So that takes in a base estimator of gradient. What do you need to calculate the momentum signal? You need a gradient. So in essence, there's only one state. This is all an inheritance-based structure. You will see a momentum update rule that is just a plain update rule and is a gradient estimator. So if we look in the code structure, the rules, you can see there's a momentum update rule, and there are the base estimators. So you can see that for momentum, it is a quantum gradient. It is a quantum gradient based rule, and it is an update rule. me just go back to the diagram. Once that is calculated, you'll get a new set of weights. So let's say you are 50-50 to begin with. You calculate new weights. One of your assets that's going massively up in value, the other one is kind of not doing very much. So the new rule says you should be 99% one asset and 1% the other asset. There is a guard class where we have to implement certain guardrails. Now, just based on AMM mathematics, you can't be 100% in one asset because the standard G3M invariant function cannot do that. It needs to have some weight in all assets. So there is a guard to say, an absolute guard to say that you cannot be 100% in an asset. But there is also a slight theory, right? So if you change your weights between blocks, say you're on block 1 and you're 50-50, and you go to block 2 and you are 99% one asset, 1% the other asset, that is equivalent to a price change. And if you have a massive price change, you effectively offer a massive arbitrage opportunity that can be massively front run and incurs massive amount of slippage. So apart from an absolute guardrail, an absolute weight guardrail, and this is all in the math guard, what we have is kind of two processes. One is to kind of clamp the weights, and the other one is to basically dictate a speed limit. This is how we like to describe things. It's basically like a speed limit where you say, okay, you want to be 99% 1% in weights in the pool. However, that's too far. So you can only be 80-20 for the next hour. This math guard is inherited by all the update rules, and it applies these two guardrails. Again, there is the guardrail logic inside the white paper. There's also a research note on why changing the guardrails too fast can cause a multi-block MEV attack surface. And in essence, one of the kind of scopes that we're saying is it is out of scope to kind of define any issues where the speed limit is defined incorrectly on a pool. This is a pool creation attribute. And if you have configured a bad pool to have a ridiculous speed limit, and then that presents a huge multi-block MEV opportunity, then the pool gets wrecked. And that's not really out of scope. That's kind of a known issue that we expect to be kind of very heavily thought about during pool creation. And we provided some tools for that as well. Okay, so now let's say the guardrail says you should be 80-20 between the two assets instead of 50-50. The update interval is, say, every hour. You are not going to change from block 1 to be 50-50 and block 2 to be 80-20. What you're going to do is to change weights linearly for the next hour until the next update between 50-50 and 80-20. So, you know, if there are, I mean, it's going to be a very, you know, simple example. If there are 3 blocks between now and the next update, trigger, and you want to go from 50-50 to 80-20, what you would be doing is changing 10% each block. Now that 10% is what we call the kind of the block multiplier. So every block you add a given kind of multiplier to the original current 50-50 weights. So we in the quantum pool, we not only save what the target weight should be like in an hour, but we store this kind of block multiplier. Now, what does this mean? You've got this cron job that you get the prices, you get the current weights, you run a specific strategy through it, you apply some guardrails that are specific to dynamic AMMs, and then you come up with kind of a block multiplier. That is kind of an expensive operation. It's actually incredibly cheap for what it's supposed to be doing because of some novel maths in these base estimators here. However, you do not want to be doing this every single block, every single trade. So what this block multiplier allows you to do, once you set it in the pool, is when you come to trading, you do not have to basically recalculate what the strategy thinks the weight should be. All you have to do is you have to say, okay, the current block weight was 50-50. It has been one block since the last update. So 50 plus 1 times 10 is 60, and that is your trade. That is your trade invariant swap weight. In some sense, this is similar in principle to how, again, Balancer V2 managed pools used to work. However, they didn't do this kind of block multiplier thing. They did the 80 minus 50 divided by the kind of the how long it's been in between the two weights. And the reason why we do a block multiplier and the reason why we store everything the way we are is because we've kind of determined that to be more gas efficient. Now, the way we store state, there's a couple of state places here, and we use the same base underlying function, which is quantum storage. Now, quantum storage, we effectively have two intermediate kind of types of ints. We pack int 128s together, and we pack int 32s together. So if we go back to the diagram, the intermediate state variables, those are int 128s, and the multipliers and weights are int 32s. We do use, as you can see in one of the rules, we do use a fixed point math library. And which one's best? Probably to, let's say, just anti-momentum. We do use the PRB math library. We use the old kind of library version of this. This is a project that used to have its own vault and pool structure before we became a Balancer partner and we've converted to Balancer. So we determined that using the library version was fine, and we didn't need to upgrade to the kind of strongly typed new PRB math library. So if we go back to the diagram, let's just do a quick recap. You have this cron job, it gets the prices, converts the prices to the right number of fixed points for the math library to work. You calculate the new weights, all using the math library. The intermediate state is retrieved using our custom packing and unpacking library that packs and unpacks int 128s into individual int 256 storage slots. That is then math guarded, and that produces an int 32 block multiplier. Now, we have actually done some internal research on this. I don't think it's published, but just to let you know, we kind of did some precision tests on whether effectively a 9 decimal place multiplier versus an 18 decimal place multiplier created a performance effect or created arbitrage opportunities that we didn't want. And we found that the difference was absolutely negligible in terms of overall performance of the pool. So that's why we have int 32s. We consider them more efficient. You can obviously pack a greater number of tokens into individual storage slots, and that makes everything more efficient. And that effectively sets the weights. And this is about, I would say, 70% of the protocol is this kind of cron job to get the weights and then set the weights. Then we have the other side of the protocol, and that is the weighted pool. Now, I'm just going to, everything's quite zoomed in. I'm just going to, I think, yeah. I'm just going to go through the individual functions, but you will find that there is some standard view functions, as you would expect. There is a compute balance function that is kind of solely used in terms of single asset withdrawals. There's some known issues in the kind of extreme weights, extreme withdrawal quantity areas of the protocol for single asset withdrawals. That's actually deemed acknowledged, and there is an explanation as to why that's a known issue that is acceptable to us. So that's kind of in the compute balance area of the code. There is a compute invariant, and then there is an on-swap function. And almost entirely, if you were to compare our kind of weighted pool with, if you were to compare our weighted pool with the standard balancer fixed weight pool, which is pool weighted, if you were to compare all of it, almost entirely, all the logic that is different is inside get normalized weights. As I kind of said, for any individual block, we are a balancer pool, a balancer fixed weight pool. The difference comes to what is the weight for that given block, and that is within get normalized weights. And a considerable amount of the logic and what the private audit that Cyfrin did that finished just a week or two ago, and the audit report is the audit report is in the audit folder of Pool QuantAMM. A considerable amount of the logic is just this packing and unpacking logic to get the weights and the multipliers. And then once we get to the crux of it, the fundamental point, and actually it's much easier if I just do it here. It's interesting with zoomed out for the presentation, makes everything slightly different. As you can see, the crux of the calculation is here. This is the weight plus the multiplier times by time since last update. So the fundamental root change between what we call TFMMs, which are temporal function market makers where the weight is determined by time, and a standard balancer pool is in effect here. Now, and the rest is all packing and unpacking logic. So you can see in get normalized weights, there's a lot of token indexing and token retrieval, because this is kind of the most efficient way to retrieve the weights. It would obviously be slightly more kind of cleaner cut code to have these in kind of a for loop, but with actually doing fixed indexes, it's slightly more gas efficient. Now, a thing about base balancer v3. Base balancer v3 has a limit of 8 tokens per pool. And the way we store this is basically by having a first and second packed, storage slot. And then we fit the first 4 weights and their multipliers in the first storage slot, and the second 4 weights, so tokens 5 to 8, we fit in the second storage slot. And this makes things, again, more efficient from a swap perspective. And that's it. We use the base weighted math library that is used by standard balancer pools. Again, that is out of scope. And really, that is kind of the main difference of the pools. A lot of it is just logic around retrieval of storage slots and weights for efficiency reasons. But the fundamental difference is this calculate, what is it? This calculate block normalized weight, where you are doing the current weight plus the weight plus the multiplier that it has been since you calculated that current weight. Now, in terms of the pool, there are some standard unit tests, and there is also a generic fuzzer. And the generic fuzzer basically fuzzes the weights, the multipliers, the number of tokens within a pool, the settings within a pool. It's a very kind of comprehensive fuzzer. In credit to Cyfrin, who expanded and made the generic fuzzer possible from our current fuzzer. That should test a considerable amount of the pool. So in tests here, in the test folder, you can see that we unit test a couple of variants of pools, as well as the factory. But there is this generic fuzzer that fuzzes through a considerable number of the variables to test both retrieval and swaps and compute balance for all the various variations that we could think of. So let's just go back to the diagram. So really, this competition, this audit, you could almost see it as two little audits in one. There's one audit where you can try to test the pool and see the kind of the access and control functionality of the quantum weighted pool itself. And there's almost a separate audit, which is an audit of this kind of cron job process that runs these completely on-chain strategies to run these automated BTF pools. And as you can see, because it's just get weights and set weights, in some sense, there's no, and that doesn't really interact with the swaps or the deposits or the withdrawals. It is really an atomic transaction, and in terms of reentrance and some other complications that you would find in a lot of other protocols, this is a kind of slightly different kind of protocol, and this is a different kind of audit. So there's a lot of potential kind of mathematical issues in terms of overflows, underflows, setting the parameters, etc. During this process. That's all kind of in scope. There is a kind of known issue section which goes into certain kind of parameter selections that are out of scope. We talked about one of them where, for instance, you misconfigured really bad guardrails that don't do the job of protecting you against multi-block MEV. We are deploying on Ethereum, Optimism, Arbitrum, and most likely Base. Yes, obviously the block times there could have some considerations, and the block structure could have some considerations for the audit. But in reality, this is kind of the cron job specified. Now, some other things to talk about in terms of potential vulnerabilities that are known. I'll just flip through a couple of them. Obviously, this does take in Oracle data every hour or every day. That's kind of our intervals that we like. There is an Oracle manipulation risk where you can say, oh, if I manipulate the Oracle price, then I can manipulate the weights according to a favorable outcome for me. The math guard does actually prevent a lot of those Oracle manipulation like attack vectors. Just in general speaking, the kind of the economic impact of a potential Oracle manipulation attack is out of scope. That doesn't mean that the actual Oracle wrappers are out of scope. It's just, you know, that the manipulation of the data being passed through the Oracle is out of scope. So that's kind of one very big known area of functionality that we consider to be kind of out of scope. Again, there are a bunch of admin functions, some of which had some medium issues raised in the private Cyfrin audit before this. But there is a bunch of admin functions, and there are effectively two other kinds of potential admins. There is the QuantAMM that is going to be an Open Zeppelin time lock. And then there is the pool creator. There is a section in the known issues about pool creators, but we effectively, under normal circumstances, we do not grant pool creators admin rights to come in and override set weights or to override the intermediate state. That's more future-proofing for a potential use case that we have around kind of more institutional and closed depositor form loops of the variants of the pools. The kind of admin functions can change a lot of these intermediate states so that you can reset a strategy if it has failed. There are like these momentum strategies do have divisions where, for instance, you might be dividing by the gradient. If the gradient is 0, then obviously that might create a divide by zero error. However, the standard process is that if if this cron job is supposed to fail in those circumstances, and then the pool can continue running as normal. The failure of one perform update because of the data meaning that there is a revert, that is desired behavior. So that is when you can pause the pool, you can reset the intermediate states if you really have to, or you could just manually perform a trigger to perform update itself. Apart from the time lock, yes, there is a pool creator person. We can consider normal pool creators to not have that permission. However, if there is an issue with that permission, then that is still in scope. We've obviously talked about standard traders and how they trade at normal balancer kind of G3M invariant calculations for a given block, not in between blocks. And the LP itself, we haven't talked about, but obviously the LP deposit and withdraw is all handled by the base functionality within Balancer. The only difference is that we have applied a new hook for to only charge on the uplift that a pool provides, not on kind of the full TVL. Now, in terms of what's been audited before and what hasn't, this uplift only example has not been audited before. There are 2 rules which have not been audited before as well, and those are the rules that are not on here, as you can see. That is channel following and difference momentum. These are kind of more computationally intensive rules that we expect to run on places like Optimism, and that is kind of why this kind of optimism, this optimism grant competition is there, and that's why they're included. Now, this uplift only example hook. Now, if you think about what an uplift only means, if I deposit 10 USD into a pool, and then in a week's time, I come to withdraw that USD, and it is now worth 20 USD. The uplift is basically double. You've doubled your money by LPing into the pool. So the uplift is 10. So we charge a fee on that $10 dollars that you have made whilst you have been LPing into the pool. Now, if you think about what this means is, what do you need to calculate the uplift? You need the dollar value of the deposit as it's being deposited into the pool. You need the dollar value when you withdraw from the pool, and then you can calculate the uplift and charge a fee. Now, what this also means is if I deposit $10 today, I deposit $20 tomorrow, my total liquidity in the pool is 30. But the 2 deposits have different uplifts. So what we do in this in this hook is that we have this mapping, which is pools fee data. And pools fee data per pool, per owner, per fee is in effect the fee data array is an array of your deposits. Now, storing an array of deposits obviously can kind of lead to some DDoS issues if somebody decides to do like 5 million deposits. In these pools, we limit it to like 100 deposits per address. Now, that could be the same person depositing under different addresses. That's absolutely fine. Obviously, there's no way of knowing that. But to avoid some DDoS issues, it is restricted to 100 deposits within the pool. And if you see what the kind of fee data includes, it includes a token ID, because every deposit is unique. It is in effect it's an ERC 721 NFT position. So each deposit has its own token ID. It has the kind of the dollar amount. Sorry, it has just the amount. It has the LP token deposit value. So instead of storing, say, in our example, it was $10. We divide per the LP token. So it's effectively the share price of an LP token. We put the block timestamp of the deposit, and we also record the uplift fee at the time of deposit. Now it is possible for the pool creator to kind of, if he has permissions, to change what the uplift fee will be, but that does not retroactively change a deposit you made, like a year ago. Like you evaluate the pool, and you evaluated that it has an uplift fee that is acceptable to you, and therefore you should not be penalized if the pool changes. So that's what's stored. So if we go to the add liquidity proportional, what you can see is that we basically get the deposit value using exactly the same get data call that we do for the cron job. And that means that the pools have to be configured, the pool constituents have to be configured to have oracles available for them. Whilst I think we stated that balancer weighted pools are in scope for the uplift only example, they do still have to be registered by the protocol, that the tokens have to have oracles associated with them so that you can get the deposit value. So we get the deposit value, and then we push the deposit on the array that we have. Now, the difficult part is obviously when you come to remove liquidity proportional. There is another example in the pool hooks section, which you could compare our one to. This is a balancer created example, and this is the NFT liquidity position example. Now, the NFT liquidity position example, you have to know your token ID to say, I want to withdraw this token ID's worth of LP tokens from the pool. We take a more kind of holistic approach that like an LP should not be tracking like which deposit they've made when. They say, I want to withdraw X amount, and you have to calculate the fee according to that X amount. So it's really BPT amounts being brought in. That then kind of removes the liquidity. And what this does is via the NFT process, it calls on after remove liquidity. So the burn process of the token basically calls on update. On after swap. So this is where we have certain logic to dictate to cycle through the deposits, and we cycle them in a FILO manner. So first in, last out manner, and we cycle through them to say, okay, if I have deposited 30 LP tokens and it was 3 deposits of 10 LPs, LP tokens, if I'm withdrawing 15, that empties the first deposit and empties half of the second deposit. So this is kind of the logic that we do on after remove liquidity. And you can see that we kind of cycle through the fee data array length. We calculate the withdrawal dollar amount. We then do the calculation fee per LP, per kind of LP token. And then we go through the process of withdrawing that fee. Now that fee is split between an admin fee that the protocol takes, which is dictated by kind of the by the fee that we have configured, and it is also dictated by the pool, where we effectively donate. It's a add liquidity donation back to the pool. So let's say in our previous example, we had a deposit of 10, it doubled to 20 dollars. We charge a fee of $5 for that uplift of $10. So that's a 50% uplift fee. That's very high, but just as an example. That is then split $1 for us and $4 for the LP. Now, in terms of what a donation is, just to the balance of code base is very large. Just to kind of say what a donation is. What a donation is it re-adds the amounts in. It re-adds the amounts in back into the pool without changing the number of LP tokens of the pool. And what this means is that each LP token is worth slightly more amounts for the LPs. And that is in effect the uplift withdrawal process. Now, sorry, I think I actually went through the transfer process. There is also this function called after update. This is an NFT position that inherits kind of standard ERC 721. So you can transfer it. Now, what does this mean? If I've made 3 deposits and they have token ID 1, 2, and 3, if I want to transfer token ID 2 to another person, I in effect have to, my deposits are now 1 and 3, and 2 is transferred to another person. So what does this mean? This means that I have to reorder my fee data array to not have 2 in, and then to delete and pop the last array. So this means that at the end of the process, if I had token IDs 1, 2, and 3, and if I wanted to transfer token ID 2 to somebody else, that is possible. It is expensive because you have to, if you have 100 deposits, you do have to reorder your 100 kind of array elements array. We do expect people to use transfer. There's kind of potential. We think there's potential kind of tax implications and things if people want to do withdraw and transfer kind of base assets compared to transferring LP tokens. Even if it's between yourself, if it's just between yourself and you want to transfer it to a different address that kind of you own, then you don't necessarily want to have to withdraw, take the fee hit when you withdraw, and then deposit again. You want to be able to transfer a particular deposit. So we do enable it, but it is slightly on the expensive side. In the tests, and we have the uplift example test, there is this transfer deposit at random test. What this does is it basically creates a random sized array of deposits and randomly starts to transfer deposits within the array. So if I had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it would randomly one test transfer deposit 4, or it would transfer deposit 2, and it checks whether or not all of them are in order. So if you're interested in the kind of transfer aspect of deposits for the uplift only withdrawal example, then you can see that here. Now, what this does is it adds implementation complexity about tracking deposits and reordering deposits if you want to transfer a particular single deposit. But what this means is, from a withdrawal perspective, which is where most LPs will be coming from, it's a much simpler process where you don't have to specify a particular deposit to withdraw. You just have to specify the fee amount, as you would in any other normal withdrawal from any other normal pool. And that is kind of the uplift only example. We did descope this because we needed to add some further tests and test some kind of further edge cases around transfers. And we did descope that from the private audit. So that is kind of fresh to this competition. So do take a look at that, and do take a look at the 2 new rules as well. But in essence, the rules are fairly well domain driven, and they're fairly well domain contained. So if we go back to the diagram, the rules can have issues themselves, But even if they produce kind of spurious weights, the guardrails do mean that these weights are in effect kind of curtailed to be reasonable by the time you get to trading. There is this kind of concept of the block multipliers. If you have a block multiplier, when do you stop multiplying, basically? It can be at when the next update interval should be, but you can actually just keep multiplying. You know, if you're going from 50-50 to 90-10, what is the actual point at which a malicious attack may occur? That point is a guardrail. So there is some logic within basically calculate block multiplier that says, when is the last possible block I can continue down this weight vector before the first token hits its guardrail and I have to stop multiplying. And that is kind of like an absolute check, and it does hide some complexities about the math guard, where some extreme edge cases can cause the math guard to basically be hit before the next update interval. That is all kind of documented in the issue section. Sorry, that was a bit of a kind of top-down glancing thing. But in essence, if you look at the known issue section, there is a little bit of a description around how this kind of last block multiplier prevents you from going over certain edge cases in the clamping. Those edge cases are known, they are expected, but they are kind of double guarded against by this ultimate last block that you can multiply over. So yes, there is complexity in the code running stack. That is almost separate to the swap complexity of retrieving and getting your multipliers and your weights, which has its own complexities, but is almost encapsulated in its own domain. And there is complexity in the uplift only example. However, the uplift only example is a hook. So again, it should be domain like encapsulated. It should be domain controlled design, where I can have a quantum weighted pool that does not configure the uplift only hook to be a withdrawal fee. You can use a different withdrawal hook. This is the beauty of Balancer v3. We specify an invariant type. Other people can specify a withdrawal hook and kind of combine the two together, as well as taking a lot of the base functionality that you might have to test for a brand new AMM, or the deposit withdraw, or the actual vault locking mechanisms, the vault reentrance issues. All of that is covered by the underlying Balancer protocol. What we are is, in effect, we are a hook for a new kind of invariant, and that invariant is a time-based invariant. Whilst there is a kind of variant of this pool that is your standard Balancer managed pool on V3, where in effect, if the pool creator is permissioned, they can just set their own weights whenever they want, and that is kind of how Balancer V2 managed pools works. Whilst there is a variant like that, there is this kind of automatic process to calculate the rules given a certain strategy. These are kind of textbook TradFi strategies. You could probably Google most of them and find TradFi equivalents. So we're not kind of reinventing the wheel on the strategy side either. So I think that's it. It's kind of hard to know without some Q&A if I've rattled on too much or haven't provided enough detail, but hopefully I've tried to simplify what is a fairly complex repo if you look at it. There is one cron job section, which involves this workflow of getting data, getting current weights, and putting that through an algorithm to get new blocks, new weights and new block multipliers. There is a weighted pool itself, which if you ignored the cron job completely, you ignored everything to do about the strategy running, etc. You could see as its own kind of running domain that could run completely isolated. And then you have the withdrawal only, the uplift only withdrawal hook that tries to align incentives between fees and pool creators by saying, in effect, the protocol doesn't really get a big fee if the pool hasn't made the LP money in that sense. So yes, that's the kind of 3 domains of this project. These rules themselves, the base estimators, you could take a look at the white papers. There's a fair amount of kind of maths that went into creating fairly simple equations for those. The strategies themselves have some equations. Channel following is probably the most complex. Channel following is almost a blend of power channel and momentum. And then you have kind of the guardrails, which have their own mathematics behind it. So if you're a bit more of a mathematician than a straight coder, you might be interested in those kind of areas. If you're more an auditor in the sense of a straight Solidity developer, you might want to test, some of these limits, test some of these admin functionality areas. There is also on the DocSend link that we have provided that hopefully will be on the kind of CodeHawks page now, if not very soon. On that DocSend page, we have created what we called basically like an audit objective document. And this is basically if we were doing it when we did our own kind of mini internal audit before we had any audits. If we were going to do an audit, what would be the things that we would look for in each section? So that might be a very good starting point in terms of what we think. Obviously, what's very cool about a competitive audit is people look in places that you don't expect, and that's maybe where you find some issues. So yeah, definitely don't take the objective document as gospel, but it does give you a good starting point as to potentially some of the areas where like we thought there might be some issues, and we asked the kind of Cyfrin private auditors to take a look at the issues.
No, yeah, that's been amazing. Thank you so much for that explanation. I think it's given auditors a head start for sure. As Christian's mentioned here, we've got a big protocol that can be broken down. There are some contracts in here that have not been reviewed by the Cyfrin private audit team. I know that's always a place that auditors like to start as well. There are a lot of different components, but I think you've broken it down amazingly then. So thank you so much for your time in this last hour. It's been a very detailed run through, and I'm sure over the next couple of days, auditors will be watching this back to get some of those extra details. Within the CodeHawks platform as well, if you go to the About section for this contest, there's a huge amount of information in there about the protocol, about the code base, the intended functionality, and all of those documents that have been mentioned throughout are linked on the CodeHawks platform. So you can see all of that. You can see where Christine and Matthew would start if they were an auditor looking at this code base, but as well, also just take a look at everything and see what you can find. There's lots to be discovered here. This contest is running until the 15th of January, and it has a prize pool of 49,600 OP. So there's lots to review here and lots to find. Well, hopefully there will be some things to find. I'm sure there will be. So just take your time to review this code base and see what's in there. I think you've done a brilliant job of explaining, breaking it up into different components, giving people a bit of direction is the goal of this live stream. So thank you so much for that. In terms of questions from this stream, we haven't received any throughout this stream. We did start the stream the minute the contest went live, so people will be reviewing the code base as we speak. So we will be receiving questions within the Discord in the next couple of days. So if you are watching this later on and you have some questions about the code base, head over to the Discord, which is linked in today's description. Matthew and Christian will be in there to answer any questions, as well as some of the CodeHawks team. So fire away, ask your questions, and we will answer them as soon as possible. That is all we have for the stream. So thank you very much for tuning in if you are watching, and thank you very much, Christian and Matthew, for joining.
Yeah, just one final thing. I think some people mentioned hard hat. This all runs on standard Foundry. The installation instructions is all standard Foundry. We were doing some hard hat kind of gas testing. That might be why you see some kind of hard hat artifacts around the place. But yes, this is a Foundry project. This all runs on Forge and Foundry, and should be kind of very simple to initialize the testing framework.
Amazing. Thank you. Yeah. Is there anything either of you would like to add before we close off the stream?
I think that was comprehensive.
It was brilliant. Thank you so much for that. But we will close off the stream. So thank you very much for tuning in, and we are excited to see what you all will find.
Brilliant.
So good luck in the contest.
Brilliant. See you all later.
Thank you. See you all later.